kahai na Hawaiʻi, lo kahia kulike, olu kamanao, ha koukulana, a honuiālana kila. Aloha mai e na Hawaiʻi, o ke aloha no ka mea nui e o mai e na Hawaiʻi. Na pua, na lei, na mamo, ala mai e ka lahui, laula ka ulana, o mai e ka lehu, a ahe o e na Hawaiʻi, ano ai no me ke aloha, aloha e, aloha e. Aloha e. Ano ai me ke aloha ia o ko pakahia paoloa, aloha. As is customary here in Hawaii, we decided to kick off this conference with an oli aloha, a chant of welcome and blessing. This particular oli, this chant that I shared with you, calls upon its listeners to observe and practice 5 very important Hawaiian values. The first is akahai, or kindness. The second is lokahi, unity. The third being olu, or pleasantness. Ha'aha'a, humility. And ahonui, patience. The person who composed this traditional oli wrote that if you practice all 5 of these values, you display the most important value of all, and that value is aloha. Ano ai me ke aloha ia o ko pakahia paoloa, aloha.
Thank you, Brandon Mafua, for that beautiful oli. Welcome to 4S Honolulu. I am Emma Koval. I'm president, that's right, of 4S for just a few more days, and I'm Professor of Anthropology at Deakin University in Melbourne, in Australia. I would like to begin by stating that I am a guest on this aina, visiting for the purposes of this conference. I trace my natal family's roots to what is now Poland, and I live on unceded lands, now known as Australia, in Naarm, Melbourne, on the lands of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge that the aina on which we gather, Honolulu, is part of the larger territory recognised by Indigenous Hawaiians as their ancestral grandmother, Papahānaumoku. I recognise that Her Majesty Queen Liliuokalani yielded the Hawaiian Kingdom and these territories under duress and protest to the United States to avoid the bloodshed of her people. I further recognise that Hawaii remains an illegally occupied state of America. I recognise that each moment I am in Hawaii, she nourishes and gifts me with the opportunity to breathe her air, eat from her soils, drink from her waters, bathe in her sun, swim in her oceans, be kissed by her rains, and be embraced by her winds. I further recognise that generations of Indigenous Hawaiians and their knowledge systems shaped Hawaii in sustainable ways that allow me to enjoy these gifts today. For this, I am grateful, and as a guest, I seek to support the varied strategies that the Indigenous peoples of Hawaii are using to protect their land and their communities, and I commit to dedicating time and resources to working in solidarity. Mahalo. These words are adapted from those suggested by the conference co-chairs, Aya Hirata Kimura and Grant Jun Otsuki, to acknowledge that we meet on colonised land. Only a small proportion of the world's land is not colonised, and even that land has seen much bloody and brutal history. A land acknowledgement at an academic conference is surely a small thing that does nothing to address the ongoing oppression of Indigenous dispossession, including environmental destruction wrought by militarism, tourism, the capitalist scene, the plantation scene, and much more. As I've explored in past academic work, such acknowledgements can be seen primarily as an expression of white anti-racist identities. But it is in this swirl of sovereignties, histories, identities, harms, ignorance, knowledge, and hopes that our work takes place. There is no outside view from where the perfect acknowledgement, the perfect critique, much less the perfect conference can be identified. I'm confident only that as a team, we have worked hard to plan for us Honolulu in a way that shows respect and remains attentive to harms. We are extremely grateful to the many Native Hawaiian scholars and activists who have shared their knowledge and insight, including the speaker you are about to hear from, Kamanamaikalani Bima, but also Manulani Alulimaya, Mehana Vaughan, Melia Akutagawa, Bruce Kaimi Watson, Aurora Kagawa Viviani, Kyle Kajihiro, Heialani Sonoda Pale, and Shelley Maneoka. I strongly encourage you to attend all of the plenary sessions and to listen and to learn. I want to express my deep gratitude to our conference co-chairs, Aya Hirati Kimura and Grant Jun Otsuki, and conference secretaries Callan Sate and Jason Alexander. The labour of conference organising is a special kind of academic labour that is difficult to appreciate until it's directly experienced. Suffice to say that the diligence and care they have shown is quite remarkable. In the wake of the devastating fires on Maui in August, Aya and Local Organising Committee Co-Chair and past 4S President Joan Fujimura, together with colleagues, compiled a list of organisations to support and resources to educate the 4S community on the wider context of the fires. For those who would like to support Hawaiian communities, please check the extensive list on the Ways to Support Local Communities section in the program PDF. Joan Fujimura and Misria Sheikh Ali have worked tirelessly on local arrangements that aim to reflect the ethos of the conference. Misria has led the development of a new aspect of the conference, the Para-Conference, organised with environmental injustice, building a global record project with the aim of grounding scholarship in place. We are keen to get feedback on this and on every part of the conference, including the tours that some of you have signed up for. So please respond when we send a survey around in the weeks afterwards. Your feedback is particularly important this year as we are currently developing a conference policy for the Society led by 4S Secretary Vivian Choi, and please come along to the business meeting to hear some more about that. The very core of the 4S team, Amanda Windle and Shiv Issar, have consistently gone above and beyond human expectations to meet challenge after challenge with good grace and humour. An exceedingly special thanks to Grant, Amanda and Shiv for taking on the bulk of the labour of building our in-house abstract submission platform, and Grant, Callan and Jason for setting up the Zoom event. This will be the second conference where our Ethics and Code of Conduct policy will be in operation. Committee Chair and 4S Secretary Vivian Choi is again leading the Event Ethics Committee, and our ombuds are Nassim Parvin and Gergely Mohaksi. If you have any concerns about inappropriate or unacceptable behaviour at the conference, please contact the Ethics at 4S Online email address, or if you prefer, approach Nassim and Gergely directly. I don't need to tell you to make the most of this time together, but I'll just point to the meetups in the program. These are a great way to meet someone new with shared interests. And whether you're in person or participating remotely, use the chat function in Zoom to message someone and tell them how much you liked their talk. Make sure you spend time with our exhibitors, tell the editors about your next project, and buy some books for your winter or summer reading. There are also special events throughout the program, including many making and doing workshops and author meets critic sessions. As a conference attendee, please know that every aspect of the conference has been carefully considered and negotiated to provide the best experience that we can. Do let us know, though, if something doesn't meet your expectations, and we'll do our best to accommodate your needs. At 5 p.m, we will be having a reception in the lobby behind you, and I will now ask you to be a respectful guest on Indigenous territory and hand over to Aya Kimura to introduce our opening keynote speaker. Mahalo.
Aloha. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kamanamaikalani Beamer as our keynote speaker. I'm particularly honored that he's here with us tonight, as he just had a baby girl 8 days ago, last week, the number 5. So congratulations, Kamana. And thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your very busy schedule. So Dr. Beamer is Dana Naone Hall Endowed Chair in Hawaiian Studies, Literature and Environment at Hawaiʻinuiākea School of Hawaiian Knowledge at the University of Hawaii at Mānoa. He also has an appointment with the Center for Excellence in Native Hawaiian Law at the university's law school. Dr. Beamer has multiple publications in the study of aloha aina and the circular economy. In 2014, Dr. Beamer published No Mako Kamana, Liberating the Nation, which received multiple awards, including the Samuel K. Kamakau Book of the Year Award from the Hawaii Book Publishing Association. Last year, he published Islands and Cultures, How Pacific Islands Provides Path Towards Sustainability from Yale University Press. Outside of academia, Dr. Beamer has been active on the issues of Hawaiian resource management and land governance. He was the president and chief executive officer of the Kohala Center, a nonprofit organization in the island of Hawaii for community-based research and conservation. Dr. Beamer was also a commissioner on the state's Water Resource Management Commission and helped to restore 45 streams across Hawaii. Now, this year's conference theme is Sea, Sky, and Land, Engaging in Solidarity in Endangered Ecologies. The idea behind the theme is to use the occasion of the annual conference to focus our consciousness on struggles over land, water, and bodies, and to deepen conversations on how to build solidarity among harmed bodies, maligned ecologies, and strained societies. Dr. Beamer's work and activism speak to these exact themes. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Beamer.
O nauna I tahala me tale hua, e hale le hua I nona yakana no e. Ta uno I ano inei, ili anei hoi o tahiti mai. A hiti mai no oko, a hiti puno me te aloha. Alohe. Alohe. Velina mai ke lohi ka aina ia kākou pakahia pau. It's a true honor and a privilege to be here and to open with this keynote. I want to thank the organizers. I saw the beautiful list of Hawaiian scholars to follow after me, and it's a real honor to open up this pathway for the greatness, the beauty, the strength, and the presence that is Hawaii that you'll experience in these forthcoming days. So my opening chant was actually a chant that was in my family for many generations, that eventually was taught from this woman here, my grandmother, on to me. I'm the only grandchild of Winona Kapua Ilohia, Mānoa Dishe Beamer. And my grandmother, my tutu, was a woman of aloha. She believed and lived a life that sought to destroy ignorance, injustice, and hate through the courageous power of love. The phrase that's quoted here, malama ko aloha, comes down to us as a prophetic phrase uttered by Hawaiian wahine Ali'i Manono in 1819 in the midst of a battle for the future of Hawaii and our cultural and spiritual future. She also used this phrase, malama ko aloha, to cultivate, to keep your love as a rallying cry for her people and our future. My grandmother would say, keep your love, keep your love. There's no obstacle for Hawaii if you keep your love. The first time I saw Tutu Pele, I think I was about 12 or 13, maybe 11 years old. Kalapana was burning on Hawaii Island. There was this radical eruption, and my tutu got some friends together, jumped in a VW bus in the middle of the night, and we drove off to see Tutu Pele. The first thing I remember was the smell of the fire, the sulfur. And eventually, as we made our way closer to the slopes, you could see that burning. We call it ena ena in the Hawaiian language. It's this deep red ember fire, color that you only experience really seeing Tutu Pele. And as the lava was kind of marching down the hillside, my tutu said, that's no ke no. And there's this chant, lapaku ka wahine o pele kahiki. Awaka e kalani no ke no. Awaka e kalani no ke no. And that no ke no, my tutu said, nothing can stop Tutu Pele. Whatever gets in her way, it's hers. And she said, we have to be like the Pele. You have to noke. Yeah, you have to be fearless. Whatever is in front of you, whatever is in front of your path, be like Pele and create something new. Carve it out. And so today I'm going to bring my grandmother into this space. She was an incredible woman, a kumuhula, a teacher, an advocate for keiki her entire life. And excuse me. I haven't slept for 8 days because my daughter's just been born, so excuse me if I'm a little more raw and emotional than I normally am. Although becoming a father has thoroughly turned me into a crybaby is what I've found. This is my youngest of 5. Hi'imaka ke kua ilohia o Manono, ke li'i kua aina kapali Beamer. And she was just born 8 days ago. She came really early, a couple weeks early. Great surprise. The day before her older sister, who just turned 8, was her birthday. So, but sitting there staring at my daughter and being a father again to a young one in the midst of all the crises that we're experiencing today, I just realized we're all born vulnerable. The only way we become who we are today, the only way anyone is in this room is like Dr. West said, because someone loved us. Yeah. No matter what our background is, our ethnicities, our political affiliations, preferences. Somebody loved us, and that's why we're here. It's amazing when we think of the selfishness, the egos, the war, the greed, the excessive profits, the imperialism, the patriarchy. All these things, when we come into this world, so vulnerable. And we have to remember that love. So these are the values I try to live by and into, and those that I try to pass on to my keiki and my students. And being a keiki of Hawaii, you must learn to persevere, to kamau, because we live in a society that's based on the overthrow and theft of Hawaiian lands and resources. The legacy of injustice against Kanaka continues today, but its roots exist in the concealing of the truth. We have a fantastic history in Hawaii, this period where we had a country, an independent sovereign state. Our people learned to grapple with the outside world and imperialism. There was a whole bunch of creativity. We created music. We created maps that documented our ancestral systems of boundaries and place. And here's a stunning example of that by this brilliant man. His name was S.P. Kalama. He understood intimately the geography of Hawaii just in his mind and through chant. And then he became a map maker, and he started to make some of these creative, amazing maps documenting our place divisions. We also, in this period, took our ancestral traditions and genealogies, the things that I started out speaking of my grandmother and my place because that's so fundamental to who we are as Hawaiians, as Pacific peoples in many ways, Maoli. And in this period, we codified these ancient genealogies and put them to print. There was no written word in Hawaii prior to 1820. And as soon as we got a hold of that, we used them to document our ancestral worldviews and traditions and relationships between people and place. And these became sort of some of the hybrid origins of a Hawaiian national consciousness. Fast forward to 1843 and a whole bunch of political strife between imperial powers and Hawaii, and our ali'i, seeing the colonization that had happened all across the globe, set out on a path to try to achieve political independence, to get Hawaii recognized as an independent sovereign state. And that actually happened in 1843, November 28th. We called it La Ku'oko'a. This was the official joint declaration by the governments of, at that period, the so-called Great Britain and France. And this was something I worked on and found in grad school. So the Hawaiian Kingdom started to develop treaties. We have the Austro-Hungarian Treaty, the Belgian Treaty, the Bremen Treaty, Danish Treaty, French Treaty, German Treaty, British Treaty, Hamburg Treaty, Italian Treaty, Japanese Treaty, Dutch Treaty, Portuguese Treaty, Russian Treaty, Samoan Treaty, Spanish Treaty, Swiss Treaty, Swedish-Norwegian Treaty, and the American Treaty. In 1893, our government was conspired against through the aid of a U.S. minister, and Hawaii suffered from fascist alternative facts long before Trump was president. In 1893, this committee of 13 settlers to the islands, some of them missionary descendants, all of them with business interests in the islands, conspired to overthrow our country with Minister John Stevens and the landing of the USS Boston troops. This was called an act of war by 2 US presidents, and they both apologized, admitted to US unlawful actions. Hawaii became ground zero of a new period of American imperialism, militarism, and expansion, and we remain apologized, yet occupied. People of this time period were incredibly politically astute. You don't develop international negotiations and treaties around the world without that. And our leadership at that time organized to defeat a treaty of annexation. In fact, there were 2 attempts at treaties. Hawaiian nationals mobilized. Dr. Noinoi Silva writes about this if you'd like to learn more. But we defeated 2 successive treaties. Because of the fierce activism and politically astute Kanaka of the 19th century, there is still no treaty of annexation between Hawaii and the United States. However, those who took control of our islands and resources after the overthrow were not merely interested in securing themselves profits in Hawaii's economic future. They were also intent on systematically destroying Hawaii's ancestral economic systems and national consciousness. When I found this quote, I had been working on my PhD for 6-ish years. I had a fellowship, so 6 months, and I was in the archives almost every day. And I just, there's something about being an indigenous person, uncovering your history at the same time as you're trying to liberate your future. And I read this, and I'll be honest, I cried. I sat there and I thought of my great-grandparents. I thought of my grandmother, these people that fought so hard to keep our language and our culture and hula, our traditions, our dignity alive in the face of this monolith. But I realized that they were never successful. And I realized that we're still here. But I'm not here to talk about the past. And I think we're gathered here to discuss our collective future. And I would like to devote the rest of my talk towards Hawaii and our world's future. When I was a kid, I envisioned the decade of 2020 would be utopian. I'm pretty sure many of the keiki, or children from my generation, might have predicted some kind of place that included the Jeffersons with flying cars, the emergence of a global society to love and peace in the likeness of the lyrics of John Lennon's Imagine, and enough fish, poi, and free pickled mango to go around for us all. But like the jar of mango left to ferment for far too long, the harsh and bitter reality is that these are times of unprecedented crisis and unpredicted political change. At home and abroad, we face a collective problem. Our communities and planets are experiencing the convergence of multiple crises spawned by fascism, unfettered capitalism, militarism, white supremacy, climate crisis, and unrivaled social-economic inequality. So-called progress and the linear capitalist economy, whose roots began in imperialism, slavery, patriarchy, and the gross conversion of the vast resources and life-giving ecosystems of Mother Earth into capital. Empowered demigods who championed the promise and progress of the plantations, who stole water from streams to line the pockets of the few at the expense of our ancestral food systems, ecosystems, and social economic structures. Wai, or water, was an akua and a resource that shaped and organized our society prior. Decades later, the promise and progress of unfettered tourist-based economy has transformed Hawaii into one of the most expensive places to live in the world. While the waste from this system has littered our streams, paved over sacred places, damaged our precious marine ecosystems, and at times overrun our lives. The U.S. military in Hawaii continues to be treated as a critical economic driver for Hawaii's economy. And I hope we'll be able to hear this sound from this brief video that provides some additional context for the U.S. military in Hawaii. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try, and hopefully we can get the sound.
It's it's constructed that the military is here to protect us. But we've been nothing but a target since they've arrived here. And it's very poignant that the Navy is poisoning our aquifer, because the Navy is actually the folks that overthrew our government on the USS Boston and pointed guns at our queen.
In 1965, the Navy decided to use this portion of the southwest coast of Kaho'olawe to test the effects of a simulated atomic bomb.
We saw this crater, and it was like, couldn't believe our eyes that somebody, a bomb could do that.
When I went there, I cried. Every time I go there, I tear up.
There's this ship called the USS Arizona still leaking oil to this day. And the only reason why the United States military doesn't want to stop the oil leaking is because they want to commemorate it as a historical event that'll live on forever. So them continuing to poison our waters is something that they do to be patriotic towards the occupation of Hawaii.
The US Navy have been poisoning the waters not just in Red Hill, but also the waters of Pu'uloa. The reason that it was called Pearl Harbor to begin with is because it was plentiful with pearl oysters and fish, and now it is home to 6 Superfund sites. They actually had to narrow it down from several dozen contaminated sites because of the military presence there. What was once one of the most abundant areas on the island is now one of the most contaminated sites on the planet.
At least 1,500 other families in Honolulu started seeing fuel in their water about 2 weeks ago. According to the Navy, the fuel came from the Red Hill Fuel Facility, which was built during World War II. That leaky fuel facility sits only 100 feet over a major aquifer that supplies water to Honolulu.
There is still at least 180 million gallons of fuel in those tanks right now that are supposed to be removed. They're supposed to have a plan in place by February 2nd. These tanks are in their end-of-life phase. Along a certain time horizon, there's a 100% chance that there will be a catastrophic failure. It would basically spell out the end of clean water and a way of life on Oahu as we know it.
It was a video produced by my comrades at the Oahu Water Protectors. While I believe that the enlightenment of any society is best measured by its relationship with water, how does a society treat and care for the most essential element of our life? The plantation, the military, and the tourist-based economy produce surplus and excess for a few, while vastly altering our ancestral landscapes, damaging our waters and food systems, and the health and well-being of Kanaka. Bombing lands and polluting waters, diverting fresh streams for profit, and subsequently leaving behind desert where there once was a wetland. The plantation, the military, and unfettered tourist economies reshaped Hawaii's relationship with water, creating tinderboxes like Lahaina to be fodder for catastrophe. This is an image, my tutu's house that I started out this talk with. She ended up spending the last days of her life in Lahaina at the home my uncle still lives in. And thankfully for our family, our home was saved and we were saved. But I got a text from my uncle in the middle of the night. It just said evacuating, and I didn't hear from him for 4 days. Many families continue to struggle and lost lives and place. It was the incredible, despicable disaster capitalists that were trying to get people to sell their properties. But the crises in Lahaina didn't just start with climate crisis. There's a deeper root cause behind these issues. So let me be clear. If so-called progress destroys the very systems that make life on our planet possible, it really isn't progress. If we allow the US military to leak jet fuel into our aquifer and to poison the life-giving waters in the name of the uncompromising need for so-called national defense, what exactly are they defending? The world would agree that the poisoning of an aquifer is an act of terrorism. Yet here in Hawaii, because it was being done by the US Navy, we had to battle the military-industrial complex, their stranglehold on our politicians, the media, and the hearts and minds of our people. In fact, it wasn't until the Navy allowed their own servicemen and women to consume petroleum-laced water that we finally found those that would listen. And we did find those that would listen. And actually, we did what many people thought was impossible. We shut down the Red Hill fuel tanks. We got them to decommission the tanks and to agree. As of today, there's roughly 74 million gallons of fuel that have been removed from that facility. And we need to remain vigilant until every drop is gone, until every ounce of militarism is cleared and cleaned up from our islands. But nevertheless, this was a significant victory. And so I find some comfort, some level of strength in knowing that the answer to these multiple crises that we experience in our world, in many ways, is one solution, is the same solution that Oiwi have been advocating for generations. And that solution is Aloha Aina. So what is Aloha Aina? Aloha is to love, to regard, to have affection. And in truth, there's no easy translation for this word in English. Too many meanings. Aloha means hello, aloha means goodbye, aloha means I love you. The way that you look at a newborn child, that deep feeling that you have, that unconscious human feeling of love and care, that's aloha. And that's the same feeling we attach to aina. And so let's break down this word aina. Ai is to eat, to consume. Na makes it sort of a noun. And so aina is literally that which feeds. You'll often see it translated as land. But if there's anything that you take from this keynote, aina doesn't equal land. When we say land, we think of boundaries, we think of property, we think of exclusionary access and territoriality. We don't think of that which feeds. So when you go home to your communities and your places and you see the beautiful landscapes, degraded or not, of our earth, think about that earth as that which feeds, as aina, not just land. And Aloha Aina really has framed this kinship relationship we have to resources and place. It defines a responsibility to us and our resources, and it's really driven this modern movement and resurgence for ecological, social justice and liberation in our islands. Here's one small example. My beautiful, amazing friends at Paepaeoheia, these people that had this vision to restore a fish pond over 15 years ago of my generation when it was covered in mangrove and many people thought it was impossible, 800-year-old pond. They set it out and day by day they worked and they collaborated, they brought in students, they partnered with organizations, Kamehameha schools, supported them. And in 2015, there was over 2,000 people gathered. I remember this giant line everybody's carrying rocks in the middle of the day. Nobody's making money. Nobody's paid to be there. So much love. There was so much aloha and purpose and meaning. And I remember people in front of me, somebody was speaking a French language. In the back of me, there was Asian languages. There's people from all around the world that gathered there. And that's what Aloha Aina does. It drives and links us. It reminds us that we're all children of Mother Earth. And Aloha Aina and its resurgence in the 1970s really coalesced around people like Uncle Walter Ritty and this man, George Helm, who passed away, lost on Ko'olave. Some people say his life was taken purposefully. In any case, they were occupying Ko'olave to stop the Navy's bombing. And in the midst of one of those occupations, George Helm kept a notebook, and we have his journals, and this is something that he writes. The truth is, there is man and there's the environment, One does not supersede the other. The breath of man, the breath of Papa, the earth. Man is merely the caretaker of the land that maintains his life and nourishes his soul. Therefore, Aina is sacred. The church of life is not in a building, it's in the open sky, the surrounding ocean, the beautiful soil. My duty is to protect Mother Earth, who gives me life, and to give thanks with humility, as well as to ask for forgiveness for the arrogance and insensitivity of man. This gentleman passed away when I believe he was 27 or 28, but incredibly brilliant revelations he was having in the midst of this struggle. So Aloha Aina and this philosophy, this relationship really help our ancestors to set up this coevolution with landscape and these social ecological systems that maximize ecosystem services and abundance of key resource species. Our oral traditions often reference this biological diversity and distinguishing notable localities describing flora and fauna of landscapes. So this system was incredibly productive and place-based for our islands. And while you're here, I'm sure you'll hear about the Ahupua'a and Aloha Aina from our other keynotes. But we set up this regenerative system, this multi-layer canopy for slow water to flow, and allows for seepage to absorb rain, cloud moisture across really millions of acres of Hawaiian lands. And we set up them in a regenerative way. We could have diverted all the water out of streams and just said, you know, it's for men. But we didn't. We took care of the streams and the ecosystems, and we tried to mimic the water system and that relationship between nature, which is about delivering nutrients and cycles. Some of the earliest aquaculture in the world you'll find, you know, here in these lokoi'a, these walled-lined fish ponds. There was an incredible amount of circularity in this ancestral system. So water was really this primary organizer. We wrote a paper on the ancestral circular economy, and these are some of the findings that we have. You know, part of what made that system function was there was these systemic and regular redistributions of wealth. Really important for the most remote islands on the planet, you know, to thrive and survive is you can't have all of the resources allocating to 1% of the population, right? There was an annual assessment of available resources. There was really these integrated and complementary natural and human systems. And the system itself really emphasized social, relational well-being over individualism. It was about people and place. An amazing paper written by a friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Natalie Kurashima, in Nature. She really modeled and surveyed these ancestral systems and found that, you know, using 6% of the lands that we use today, that system was able to feed about roughly 86% of what Hawaii's population would be today. And it was incredibly productive. So today, agriculture uses nearly 4 times as much land, and it produces only 13% of the food that we consume. And some of the hopeful aspects of this is 71% of this land base still remains undeveloped and is a model and an important strategy for food sovereignty and security and climate mitigation crisis here in Hawaii. So when our ancestors came to Hawaii on canoes and migrated back and forth, they saw these incredibly amazing, beautiful highline islands, and they saw that rain system and cycle, and Kane Kawai Ola, this God, this akua, water, and this sacred relationship. And they began to form social structures that, again, really tried to mimic this water cycle. So this is sort of our image for the Hawaiian ancestral circular economy, where water was this primary organizer. If everyone can say wai, wai is translated as water. If you say wai, Try again. Waiwai? Yeah, waiwai means wealth. So water is translated as wealth. And the idea behind this is that the economy, should be like water. And what does water do? It's circular, it flows, it provides nutrients across the land. It's not stagnant, it doesn't stay in one place, it's not hoarded, it's to be respected. And so it's an incredible alternative to unfettered capitalist, oligarchic markets that we have that our world's suffering from today. And again, the principles that we find in this Hawaiian ancestral circular economy, relationship building, you needed to have these balanced systems of governance. So I'm going to talk about being on the Hawaii State Water Commission, where roughly 7 people make decisions for all the waters in Hawaii. We have to have a little more balance in that, where that's a little too top-down. Again, what made it productive is this systemic and regular redistributions of wealth and power. It promoted regenerative social ecological processes. And this one's super important, is environmental kinship. Some of my scientific friends may have challenges with this, and I get it, but Earth is alive. We're all children of the Earth. And we have to think about, when you see resource as ancestor, you make better decisions in terms of care. And this is a really important point, I think, for the future of our world and islands. So with the proper historical context and framing, one can see that a Hawaiian conception of Ea, which is often translated as sovereignty, breath, life, and the philosophy of Lohaʻaina, has been fighting against the systems that are responsible for capital-induced climate crisis, imperialist greed, and the arrogance of man for generations. Perhaps not everyone in Hawaii has joined us, but every time an Lohaʻaina stood up to try to stop an island or a piece of aina from being bombed, restored a lo'i, an ancestral garden or system, or a fish pond, or resisted another hotel being built over the bones of our ancestors, we were essentially fighting against the capitalist philosophies of endless development and consumption that has brought our planet to the brink of extinction. For generations, Aloha Aina were trying to wake up others to the harsh realities that our world was heading in a terrible direction. We were trying to restore the systems that truly brought liberty, dignity, and abundance to our islands and communities. Similarly to George Helm, today we find ourselves up against incredible odds. Yet in spite of the illegal overthrow of our country and the seizure of our lands, our philosophy of Aloha Aina remains. We Aloha Aina stand face to face against perhaps the most powerful military and economic force our world has ever known. Anyone who has flown to Honolulu can look down and see the fighter jets and the battleships of the United States, who attach like leeches to our island's natural resources and feed on the dignity and soul of an occupied nation. One can see the hodgepodge urban sprawl of Honolulu and the skyline and the hotels built over the sands of our birth that are increasingly becoming threatened by the impacts of climate crisis. I spent 8 years on Hawaii's Water Resource Management Commission, and the strategies for liberation to me have to be multi-pronged. We have to write, we have to educate, we have to speak the truth to power. We have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations where sometimes we're infiltrating tainted, imperfect, imperialistic systems that were never built to serve us and our people, and try to gut them out from the inside out. And this was tremendously difficult work. It was compromising, it wasn't easy, but we did some good things in restoring some of Hawaii's streams, and we failed, however, to stop the Red Hill leak in 2021. In 2013, when I first got on the commission, there was a large spill, 27,000 gallons, and I spent 8 years questioning the military, with them looking me in the eyes saying, this will never happen again. We have the most up-to-date systems and monitoring. We would never poison our own servicemen and women, Are you crazy? We would never do that. We drink the same water as you. And it all happened in 2021. Complete lies. And after the military tried to tell us that we needed the Red Hill system, it was absolutely vital for national security. It was one of the most pivotal, state-of-art facilities on the planet. And in about 3 to 5 months' time, they went from that to saying, it's so broken and dilapidated, we can't even drain the fuel. The amount of lies and untruth is entirely incredible, unacceptable. The fact that politicians stood session after session and refused to close the facility, unacceptable. And I'm not taking on individuals, but I'm talking about the power of the military-industrial complex. The way that it takes good people and it turns them into cowards, shakes up their souls and keeps them from speaking the truth. And we have to fight that. We have to stop that for the future of Hawaii and our islands. So when we talk about climate crises, you're going to hear about suburbans. Lately, there's a big debate over gas stoves. Let's talk about the US military. One of the most harmful polluters of our planet. When we want to solve for climate crisis, why aren't we fighting the US military? It's the same solution. They pollute as much as many countries in the world. And here in Hawaii, we need to stop the bombing on Pohakuloa, stop the bombings in Palestine, realize that the military force that's training here is the same one that's destroying people in other places right now. And the truth is, we're the last generation that can reverse climate crisis. I don't believe in a future for humanity that's on Elon Musk's cyber ships to Mars. This is the only life that we have. And we have to battle and fight these structures. I don't have any silver bullets, but I'm saying some of the things that we learn in Hawaii is the ways that we've challenged these structures face to face against incredible odds. We also understand that billionaires are significantly more at fault for climate crises than me running my gas stove. And I think we have to be real about attacking these structures head on. Those of white supremacy, of the 1% and unfettered capitalism. And it's a harsh reality in Hawaii today. I long for the times of our ancestral past, but the reality is today, about 88% of our food is imported. The high cost of living, since COVID especially, more and more of people of Oiwi descent are having to move away. Dear friends and cousins and colleagues, moving away to Vegas to survive. And there's serious water crises and issues all across our islands. So people are being priced any day. You can look at the headlines, priced out of paradise. Half of the families experiencing food insecurity, people moving away, extremely high cost of living. And all the time power wants to revert to these archaic systems that essentially got us into the same crises. But there is hope. And you'll see aloha aina as justice, and you'll learn about these community-based subsistent fishing areas across Hawaii where, kind of contrary to Anglo conservation, keeping people out isn't always the best solution. Implementing indigenous systems of knowledge in ecosystems care, people that have observed fisheries and understand intimately the spawning cycles of these fish. When these people are empowered in management systems, it actually can increase biodiversity as well as overall biology of a marine system. And so you'll see some of that incredible work happening in Ha'ena and in Mo'omomi on Moloka'i, and I'm sure Mehana and Malia will talk to you about this. We also have, and I want to encourage you folks, maybe before the conference or in these field trips, try to get out and see our lo'i system, see our fish ponds. There's all kind of incredible biocultural restoration of social ecological systems happening across our islands. Really, really cool stuff. And then really coming out of COVID is how do we grapple the monolith of unfettered tourism. If anyone was here, and maybe a few people in this room were during COVID, first time anyone in multiple generations experienced open, empty beaches. It was incredible. You go down to Waikiki and the white-tipped, the lalakea, the white-tipped sharks were returning. Huge schools of fish, turtles, on the beaches that you've never seen before. And the streets of Waikiki were empty. But coming out of, and we had high hopes, to reframe tourism. We have been somewhat successful in the Hawaii Tourism Authority adapting this sort of regenerative tourist model. Myself and a group of friends created this entity called Ainaloha Economic Futures, where we set up goals and values to redevelop our economy based on Hawaiian ancestral values. Not all of that has been successful. It turns out power comes back very, very quickly, and the old systems do not want to adapt without constant resistance and force. But we have been successful in some of these areas. And then there's all kinds of things happening right now in Hawaii around complementing the circular economy. And this is a larger global discussion. I've learned from my European colleagues and friends, starting at the University of Augsburg, and been engaged in this work, and very hopeful about seeing some of the changes that are slow but happening in the EU. Some things that you wouldn't even hear about in America that are taking place. And maybe you're familiar with it. It's really, circular economy is sort of a critique on the linear economy. So instead of take, make, waste, we're trying to, here in Hawaii, rethink that and be regenerative. Think about give, take, regenerate. Ancestrally, when we fished reefs, the first thing our people would do is feed the reefs. We would take the food waste from sweet potatoes and kalo, and in places that they were connected to these areas, they would actually feed the fish, give, and then tame the fish and be able to collect them in nets. And so this idea of give, take, regenerate is an important metaphor and model. We're also collaborating with Kate Rayworth, an incredible speaker and thought leader in designing new economies. She has a model called Donut Economics. It's actively being engaged in places like, actually I think you guys are in Amsterdam at the next conference, and they've adapted this Donut Economics model there, for instance. And so we've been collaborating a lot with Kate Rayworth as well on these issues. And ultimately, it's really about Aloha Aina is our framework. Aloha Aina is what has fed us. Aloha Aina is what has given, people with no arms and military the courage to look the US Navy in the eye and say, stop bombing our islands. Stop poisoning our waters. Stop telling us lies. And so this philosophy of Aloha Aina is something we want to always stay embedded in and bring the best practices from around the world to solve the solutions that we have, that we need to have for Hawaii today. And so Aloha Aina challenges us to see the Aina as kin. It reminds us that all of us are children of Mother Earth. It challenges us to focus on relationships and to fight the structures that are at the root causes of climate crisis and injustice. And Again, please forgive me. I think it's the lack of sleep for 8 days and being incredibly emotional and philosophical. But at the end of the road, there's Aina. I've seen it. And I want to say, you know, at least for me, aloha Aina. One of my friends says it in the best way. You know, he said, look, Aina is our grandmother. And if you care for my grandmother, you love her, then we're family. And so aloha Aina isn't about an ethnic idea. It's about caring and loving for our place and our planet. And we need courageous actors. We need new ideas and innovations to happen in Hawaii and across the world together. And Aloha Aina has enabled us, you know, to create these kinds of relationships. So I want to ask, you know, while you are here in Hawaii, to try to experience Aloha Aina, get out of your comfort zone, and Hawaii can change people. And try to learn a little bit from this place and know that we're open, and at least in my lab, you know, wanting to collaborate to solve on these issues. Again, we've just been blessed to have incredible relationships and want to develop more here for our islands and for Hawaii. So in closing, just please remember, land is actually Aina, is that which feeds us. And forgive my audacity, but I'm going to assert that we're all a child of Mother Earth, and we're in this together. So happy to stay in contact, and mahalo nui for your time and this tremendous privilege and honor. Aloha nui.